Good morning. Welcome everyone to this meeting of the Planning Committee, taking place in the Walton Suite, Winchester Guildhall. It's Wednesday, the 15th of November 2023, and the time is 9:30 a.m. My name is Councillor Jane Rutter, and I'm Chair of the Planning Committee. To my right is Councillor Edwards, the Vice Chair of the Committee. Around the table, we have the other elected members, and we are supported today by a number of officers. To my left, Lorna Hutchins for the planning team, Daniel Lucas, our legal advisor. The case officers at the moment, it's Catherine Watson, but that will change usually with each item. And Matthew Watson from Democratic Services, who supports the committee and operates the recording equipment. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded to the Council's YouTube channel. Subtitles are available, and advice on how to turn these on is set out on the website. Can I please remind everyone to ensure your mobile phones and any other electronic devices are on silent or preferably turned off altogether. In the unlikely event that it is necessary to evacuate the building, the fire alarm will sound. Please follow all the instructions given to you by our team. Please make sure you've looked at the handout provided on your chairs or on the information slides displayed as you walked in and during the breaks for further guidance about this meeting. To ensure the smooth running of the meeting, I ask that nobody calls out from the back of the room during the proceedings. In accordance with the public speaking protocols of the meeting, those who have registered to speak will be able to address the meeting for their allotted time. If there is any disruption of the proceedings and the committee is not respected, it may be necessary to temporarily adjourn the meeting. Finally, can I welcome the members of the public to the meeting? Those of you who have registered to speak, I will call you forward when it is your time to make your contribution. Members of the committee may ask you questions of clarification, so please remain at the microphone until after members have asked their questions. The microphone is turned on by pressing the button on the base of the unit, and a timer will appear on the screen to remind you of your remaining time. So now we turn to the agenda. So Matthew, are there apologies and deputy members?
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. So we have one apology from Councillor Atchwell this morning. It's been replaced by Councillor Williams. Thank you, Chair.
Very much, Councillor Williams. Thank you for turning up in Councillor Ashwell's place. Disclosures of interest. Are there any disclosures of interest? Councillor Williams.
Yes, it's agenda item number 12. So prior to being elected to the City Council in May, in April, I was member of the Planning Committee at Bishop's Waltham Parish Council and voted to object to item 12 on the agenda. So I will leave the room for that when it arises.
Thank you very much. Any other disclosures of interest? No? Lovely. Item 3, the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 18th of October. Are these an accurate record of the meeting? Councillor Reid.
Chairman, unfortunately, I'm not able to go along with the acceptance of the minutes because there is an element which has been missed out, and that is under item 9, the planning appeals. Questions were asked and some answers were given, but it's not been recorded. It was recorded on the live output, and I know members of the public have heard that, and members of the public are listening today as well. So unfortunately, unless that is put back in, I'm not able to go along with the correction of minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. We will carry the minutes forward to the next committee and make that addition for you, although we do just note those reports, so it's not normal to have great screeds of minutes, but if you'd like to make sure that that particular point is noted, we will discuss that and come back to the next meeting.
Thank you, Chair. That's what I was going to suggest, and they are supposed to be a representation of the true facts that took place at the meeting.
Thank you for raising that. Okay. The next point is to accept the update sheet as an addendum to the report. Is that agreed, members?
Chairman,
Yes.
because of item 6, there are a number of pages, and to have those in front of us 10 minutes before the meeting is a little bit short-sighted.
Well, as is
Just a
normal,
note.
Councillor Reid, I understand your point, but as is normal, this is emailed out the night before and is available to members to see the night before. And we all know that the update sheet is going to be there.
Yeah. I realise that, Chair, but I didn't get in until 1 o'clock this morning, so.
Okay. So I hope you all scanned it. I know that you were here significantly before the start of the meeting, Councillor Reid, and will have had an opportunity to read through those extra updates anyway. Do any members require 5 minutes just to look at the update sheet, given that it is very long and relatively complicated? I don't want anybody to think that we haven't considered all these items thoroughly. Are we all confident that we've read through the update sheet? Yes? Thank you very much, members. Okay, so we now move to the presentations of items on the agenda, and item number 6 on our agenda is land to the southwest of Woodlands Park, Poles Lane, Otterbourne, and our presenting officer is Catherine Watson. If you could give us your presentation, please, Catherine. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to note that members attended a preemptive site visit on Monday morning, so members will be aware of the nature of the site and its characteristics. So the application is for the erection of office accommodation for startup and incubation businesses. It's situated outside the settlement boundary of Otterbourne. Here you'll see in the bottom right hand corner is the settlement, and then you can see the M3 motorway, and then the site here is in pink. Here we have a parish boundary plan. It was requested at the site visit. So the site here is with the red flag. And so you'll see that the top part of the site is within Compton and Shawford parish area, and the bottom part of the site is within the Otterbourne parish area. Both of those parish councils were consulted on the proposals. So here we have the site plan. So we'll see at the top there's the existing dwelling of Woodlands, and then we can see that we've got the proposed development here. So here's the building. It's set out in a courtyard shape, so there'll be an external courtyard for people to sit and spend time. We've got parking at the top here, which also runs down the side. This is adjacent to the M3 embankment. Here you will see the green area is marking out woodland that's existing. So that will be retained, and there'll be a suitable buffer between the woodland and any of the development. And then here you'll see the access into the site off Poles Lane. So this is an existing access which serves the dwelling, and it will be widened slightly to accommodate for vehicles entering and leaving the site. And here we have the proposed landscape plan. So I appreciate it's a bit difficult to read what the different habitats or landscapes are, but we've got the parking area here. We've also got the building here, and in the courtyard there'll be areas of lawn, there'll be a pergola, there'll be access routes throughout the courtyard, and to the bottom here we've got a proposed swale which runs around the the bottom left hand corner, and that will help with surface water drainage. And And then we've got adjacent to the southern part of the woodland is a proposed wildflower meadow. You'll also see at the top above the parking area are new trees, hedging to be planted. So just to continue on the landscape, so we've got the area of woodland here again. The site boundary is in red. The red hatched area is the developed land, which has a sealed surface on it. The woodland is shown here. The courtyard is denoted as vegetated garden. And then we've got rural trees, which are these dots here that are on the site. Here we have the tree protection plan. So I suppose that the most important thing on this is to note that to the left side of the building, 2 trees are to be removed. So there's a blue cedar and there's another tree, and I can't see what it says on the plan, but I can clarify that. And then within the woodland here, there's a beech which is being removed. All the other trees are being retained. The blue line denotes the tree protection area where the fencing will be put up during construction to protect those existing trees. So here we have the proposed ground floor plan. So we can see around the courtyard there are different size units. So the green units are the larger size, the red units are more medium size, and then the blue units are the smaller size. And then first floor plan, we've got more 4 larger size, and then we've got sort of medium size in the pink. And then here's the roof plan. It's supposed to have solar panels on all of those roof surfaces. So here we have the north and east elevations. So at the bottom, the east elevation, which runs adjacent to the M3 boundary. The area that's hatched on the ground floor will be the main entrance into the building and the courtyard. And then here we have the north elevation. So this is the elevation, the top of the courtyard, the elevation that will face towards the existing dwelling. And then we have the south and the west elevation. So at the top, the south elevation is showing the 2 arms of the courtyard, and you can see into the courtyard, external courtyard area. You'll see that the units are all accessed via a covered walkway at first floor level, and access to that walkway is positioned here. And then the bottom elevation is the west elevation, so that is what will face, that's the other arm of the building, and that will face into woodland. So here we've got some internal elevations. So we've got the internal east elevation. So that is the side, again, inside of the building that is adjacent to the M3. And then internal west elevation is on the opposite side. And here are some proposed views. So materials include metal cladding, timber cladding, and here we can see the solar panels. And then this is from the access road as you would drive up towards the parking spaces. And this is a view from the covered walkway. So you'll see that the walkway the roof has an overhang, and this provides shelter for people using the walkway. And here we have some site photos. So to the left, that is looking up from the access, looking up towards the site, and on the right, this is on the access path, and that's looking down towards the road and the woodland. And then here we have on the left, this is looking into the site from the bottom of the site. And then on the right, you'll see this is the M3 embankment. M3 runs at the top of the slope here. And then again, this is on the left-hand side, this is taken from near the top of the site. So you'll see the large grassed area. You'll see that there's a slight difference in levels as it drops to the east and also to the south. And then on the right hand side, again looking up towards the existing dwelling. And then this on the left is taken from the top of the site, so that's looking down towards the boundary with the woodland. And then again, just from the top of the access road, looking across the site and towards the woodland that is adjacent to Poles Lane. So that concludes my presentation. Recommendation is to refuse, subject to the reasons that are contained within the committee report. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Catherine. We now move to public speaking. We have the ward councillor, Councillor Brophy. If you'd like to come forward, please, Adrian. Thank you. And you have 5 minutes. And you know the routine, don't you? Thank you. When you're ready, 5 minutes.
Okay. Just realised I didn't pack my reading glasses, so bear with me, Chair. I'll do my very best. So thank you, Chair. I want to speak today in favour of the proposed developments. So although there's a recommendation to refuse due to being outside of the settlement, I think there's good reasons to make this a worthy exception. The future land survey cited by planning officers in their recommendations states that exceptions to building on rural land should only be made if a case can be made to support local demand. Having worked as a freelancer in small business in the city for 15 years, I can state from personal experience that finding flexible, short lease, co-working or hot desking spaces and incubation spaces is incredibly difficult. This has only become more difficult since the pandemic as more companies have adopted hybrid working models. More people work remotely, and as a greater uncertainty has pushed businesses to step away from longer term leases found in premium city centre locations. The officer's report states that startup units aren't an exceptional requirement according to the local plan. But I'd suggest that this description doesn't adequately cover the blend of hot desking, flexible workspaces and startup spaces that's covered in this proposal. It's perhaps a reflection that the local plan was developed prior to the mobile and hybrid working and to COVID-19. This is why I think that InQHive offers a distinctive and in-demand model of low cost and shorter leases that are sought after by small and growing businesses. Today, many freelancers and micro businesses do indeed work in sites on the edge of villages and in converted barns for exactly these economic reasons. With regards to demand, it's important to note that the current InQHive site at Hursley Park, less than 3 miles away, currently has a waiting list of 55 people. On visiting this location, I found they'd even made space in a hallway at the top of the stairs for a desk, such was the existing demand. It's also important to note demand for spaces like this is inherently hyper-local. Small businesses seeking to manage costs are also looking for spaces closer to home to minimise the time and cost of travel. Looking at the customer profile of the InQHive Hursley waiting list, 96% of applicants live in the South Winchester area. I think the current waiting list for InQHive's Hursley site demonstrates there's already demand for the new sites. Arguably, we should also consider that placing sites like this closer to communities like Otterbourne helps to reduce journeys into the city itself. As we increasingly look to cut carbon and congestion, we need to provide communities, including rural and semi-rural communities, with alternative workspaces closer to home. While I support the application, I do have concerns about the challenges of road safety on Poles Lane, which is an ongoing issue in the ward. The entrance is in a national speed limit area, potentially creating a risk to road users and those accessing the site itself. With regard to this, I think the offer by Inkyhive to agree a condition and a Section 106 agreement to pay for the moving of the 30-mile-per-hour speed sign and Village Gateway and Poles Lane is a reasonable way of mitigating this issue. I'm also speaking today at the request of the Chair of the Otterbourne Parish Council, Mark Smith, to request this condition. I should note that the parish is otherwise neutral on the proposal. It's worth noting that Hampshire Highways hasn't stated the change in the speed limit to be a necessary step, but I think it's a practical one to ensure this section of the road continues to remain as safe as possible. Final thoughts. I think it's also important to note that the rural nature of this development can be overstated. Not only is the site immediately opposing an existing office building, which is occupied by a financial management firm, it's extremely close to the M3. The committee members on the site visit were able to see and hear this firsthand on their site visit. And it was probably a struggle for you all to hear what the officers were saying to you on the day, which I think suggests that this limits the rural nature of the development. And also it limits the degree to which we should see this development as being the thin end of the wedge for further rural development. Although Woodland Park offers some beautiful landscaping and mature trees, the opportunities for this currently private site to be enjoyed or used by the wider community is at present very limited by the nature of this location. However, I think one of the ancillary benefits of this facility proposed is there's an opportunity for more people in the community to access and enjoy this surrounding environment and the landscaping of Woodlands Park. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brophy. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for the ward member? Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor, you mentioned Poles Lane. What is the speed limit on Poles Lane?
It's 60 miles per hour and it changes just at the motorway overpass down to 30 on the other side of that.
Thank you. If I may, a second one, Chair. In inclement weather, is that road ever closed?
There have been flooding issues in inclement weather.
And is flooding a serious concern in that area?
Yes, I believe it is, yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Lee.
Councillor Brophy, thank you for that. You mentioned Hoseley Park had a waiting list of 55 wanting office space. Do we have any sense of where the demand will go if we can't provide it locally?
I think that's an interesting question. I know there's a current Inkyhive site in Winchester city centre as well, which I think may be seeing a challenging future. I'm not sure about whether that will continue. There's also a site similar to this in Garnier Road in Winchester, which I think is also closing. So again, the facilities are limited. And I think the big challenge is anywhere in the city centre becomes incredibly expensive for smaller businesses and freelancers and hot deskers. So a place as expensive as Winchester, the opportunities for hybrid work and hot desking is always going to be subject to this kind of economic pressure, which does make building closer to where people live a better idea, potentially, in my view.
Thank you. Councillor Lee, if you could just switch your microphone off, please. Thank you. Any other questions of clarification? Thank you very much, Councillor Brophy. You may return to your seat. Thank you. We do have Councillor Thompson down to speak, but I don't see her here. So we will move on to the supporters, which is David Killeen, George Scott Welsh, Louise Cutts, Naomi Cressweller, Steve Jenkins and Jeremy Tyrrell. If you'd all like to come forward, I assume that one of you is going to be speaking and the others are available to answer. Two of you speaking and the others available to answer questions. Okay, if you'd like to come forward. Bring another chair or two. Make sure that those who are speaking have access to a microphone. So between you, you have 3 minutes. And the timer will start when you start speaking. Thank you very much.
Excuse me. Hi, I'm George Scott Welsh, the CEO of Inkyhive. IncuHive is a local business incubation company born out of Winchester University. We operate and manage a supported co-working space to help startups flourish. Winchester is a very difficult city to start a business in, and too many fail or have their growth stunted due to the lack of available flexible space. To keep costs down, our model is to find space where the landlord is willing to take a share of the profits. These landlords or affordable properties are rare and non-existent within Winchester's district's settlement boundaries, as our sequential test has demonstrated. We have a huge local waiting list and can't satisfy the need, resulting in startups moving out of the district, stopping growing, delaying launching, and sometimes closing their businesses completely. Almost all of our customers are local, with most south of Winchester. This need is replicated at all our IncuHive sites, which are full and have long waiting lists from people looking to work near home rather than from home. This site is proposed to address the local need. One of our customers has offered his land under a similar profit share agreement, and this is why we are here. Located close to our Hursley site, the position is ideal for our growing move-on businesses. Winchester's local plan is silent on incubation space, and we are unsure what else we can do to prove the exceptional circumstances needed to justify this location. We understand that your officers are concerned about precedent, but there are a particular set of circumstances here that would rarely be repeated. We are also willing for you to condition any permission to ensure the use remains as incubation space in perpetuity. Like rural exception sites for affordable housing, we wish to be considered as a rural exception site for employment for startups only. Neither parish council object to our scheme, considering it both forward-thinking and useful for local employment. Both have welcomed the BREEAM Excellent construction standard. We have also accepted Otterbourne's request for the provision of a village gateway feature. David.
Good morning. I'm speaking today as an individual and not in my capacity as chair of Hursley Parish Council. I am speaking in favour of this plan. I'm aware that IncuHive have been liaising with Otterbourne Parish Council to address their concerns about traffic on Paul's Lane, but in my experience, traffic has not been an issue from the IncuHive site at IBM Hursley. I also understand that Hampshire Highways have no concerns regarding this application. The Hursley IncuHive units have proved to be very popular with both local people and IBM staff, and I've met with a few of them. I've also spoken with IBM site management, and they were only able to tell me about the benefits and that there were no significant negatives as far as they were concerned. I also very much approve of the concept of helping small startup enterprises to have more local support, such as this, from which to create their business. Thank you for your attention.
We have a specialist consultant. We have a specialist consultant team ready to answer any questions. It's not possible to cover everything in 3 minutes, so please ask us. We're here to help.
Very good timing. Thank you very much. And thank you for that offer. Members, do we have questions of clarification? Councillor Lee.
Yeah, if I may. Can you just outline what is the supply of energy to the demand for this new structure on site at maximum occupation and use?
Thank you, Councillor. Jeremy Tyrrell, the architect for the scheme. The scheme has been designed to BREEAM Excellent standards.
Could you just speak more clearly
Sorry.
into the microphone?
Yes, can you hear me? The scheme has been designed to meet BREEAM Excellent. Your policy requires such. In terms of detailed design for the mechanical systems, we haven't got into that level of detail yet, but the likelihood is air source heat pumps for the heating. The roof, we have used photovoltaic panels. George may be able to fill in other details about energy bills and how that's distributed across the tenants. Does that
Yeah,
help?
so we use a system called Lightwave, which has PIRs in all the offices, so their presence detection, to limit the energy usage. So if you fall asleep at your desk, the heating will turn off. If you go out for lunch, the heating will turn off. So our current site in Hursley, the energy consumption is really low because of the systems we put in.
Councillor Gordon-Smith.
Yes, I noticed on the floor plan you've got a range of different sized units. My understanding is that some of the smaller units can be made bigger. Is that correct? And sort of amalgamated?
That's the key for our product is flexibility. So a company might grow or shrink, and they might grow and need the office next door, and so we can bash through, and they can have additional space.
So that being the case, you could actually link a lot of these units together to make several very large spaces, or one very large space if need be.
I mean, in theory, but that's not our customer base. So our customer base start with a desk, move into an office, and as soon as they're very grown up, they move on, and they're probably not for us. So we're a business support provider as well as a property manager. So it's about supporting small businesses, startups, and when they get to a bigger size, they move. I've had one company in Brockenhurst that got to 75 million market capital, and they moved to London. So,
Councillor Williams.
Yes, thank you. I know you mentioned on your choice of choosing this particular site from the business case. I was just wondering if any of the sites that are allocated in the current local plan for employment had been considered at all.
Perhaps if I answer that question. So some of the comments that we've had from the planning department in terms of looking at justifying this site, we've had repeated requests in terms of justification. So we've done everything we can to try and achieve a recommendation for approval. Inky Hive have been looking for 5 years, and I think your strategic planning policy team think that this is a matter of choice for them choosing this site, but this is the only opportunity that has come up in 5 or nearly 6 years now. So we've been asked to do a sequential test, which proves that, you know, we have been looking for that length of time. We've looked at all the employment sites, and George can talk to you exactly why they are unacceptable. Usually they're too small, the fuel bills are too high, the rents are exorbitant for startups, and the leases are incredibly inflexible. So it's just impossible when you're looking at the incubation model to find anywhere that is sequentially preferable. It's only because one of George's tenants had a big front garden and was willing to take the kind of 10% of your profits deal that we are here today. If this isn't approved, I don't know how much longer, you know, I don't know where those startups will go. I mean, George, you can probably fill in on that point.
Yeah, the rent to rent model in this industry is very, very difficult to get to work for our type of customer, which is getting someone out of their bedroom into an office space to help them flourish and grow. WeWork is an example last week that failed at that model. The Pump House is another company that's struggling with the rent to rent model. So we need flexible landlords that are willing to support our type of model to keep the prices and flexibility low enough to meet the demand. And if you're a startup, you won't take a lease on a building. The industry is set up to for long leases. The banks value property on the strength of covenants, and it's just not set up for our type of customer, which need that flexibility to take risks, to grow, or fail and not be burdened by a 5-year tenancy lease that will take them into bankruptcy.
Thank you. Councillor Laming.
Chairman, this is a question, but
Sorry, Councillor Reid. Councillor Laming was before you, then Councillor Cunningham, then you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a very interesting one you've got there, but how will it affect employment for people that live in Osborne and Shawford? Have you got a lot of people from the villages wanting their space?
Well, thank you, Councillor. Kat, I think we've got some, in our presentation, we've got some figures in terms of who's local and who's not. What we've done is we've looked at the waiting list. We've got 55 people on this particular IncuHive's waiting list, but there are all your other IncuHive sites are full with waiting lists as well elsewhere. But what we've done is we've looked at the postcodes and we've looked at where those people live, and the majority live in an area which is south of Winchester town. So if you look at the figures there, we've got 53% are south of Winchester. So yes, we've got Otterbourne, we've got Hursley, we've got some people in Shawford, Twyford, Ampfield, you know, those kinds of areas. And I think we've got a plan, a map to show the spatial location of, I mean, that the quality of that isn't that good, but the site is in red, and the people on the waiting list are represented in blue. So you can see that the vast majority are south of Winchester town, and the existing clients as well that you have in IncuHive are also, many of them are local. So this does cater for a particularly local need.
Thank you. The other question I have is that when we were there, the land was quite boggy because of the amount of rainfall we've had recently, but Poles Lane does suffer with flooding and that. And I want to know what mitigation you're going to put in to try and hold that back.
Okay, thank you. So the planning requirement is that you don't make the situation worse. Okay, so if you tick that box, that should be the flooding issue ticked. However, we held a whole consultation event, and both parish councils came, and we had quite good attendance from local people who did bring up that issue. So we've got to make sure that there's no additional water coming off of our site. So that's what we've done. But we've also, if I can bring our transport consultant in, we are able to potentially better it a little bit through what we're doing at the access point. Would you like to?
Of course, yes. So in addition to the retaining of water within the site, there is an existing occasional surface water flooding problem on Poles Lane that manifests during times of very heavy rainfall. I went to site yesterday after pretty significant rainfall, and it wasn't there then, but I have seen it, and we've met on site numerous times, and there is a ponding issue. As part of the site access work, so forming the new widened junction, we have put forward proposals to introduce weir type curbing along the southern side of Poles Lane, which will enable water to leave the carriageway and go into the very substantial drainage ditch which runs on the southern side. At the moment, the water can't get into that ditch because held up by the verges and the silted up grips. But there's a solution potentially there as part of the formation of the access to allow that water to leave the carriageway and get into the ditch and run away.
Thank you. Very thorough response. Councillor Cunningham, your turn.
Thank you, Chair. You've got different colour codes on the office spaces in the hub itself. Obviously, they take different capacities in terms of personnel. Can you tell me what the total personnel, the head count would be should all of the offices be full?
We can't do that. The whole model is based on flexibility and startups succeeding or failing and moving around a lot. What we have done is we've taken some figures in terms of the traffic impact, and they've been agreed with Hampshire County Council. But the model, what you've got in front of you is indicative, and it has to be indicative because what we're looking at is at flexible floor space. George, do you want to take that?
Yeah, so at our Hursley site, we probably have 200 people on the door system, which allowed access in and out. But at any one time, we'll have between probably 40 and 60 people on site working. Some companies use hybrid models, so they'll have an office space which is only 4 people, and on one day some staff will come in and the others will work from home. We've got about 54 parking spaces in Hursley, and at no point in the last 4 years have we needed more parking spaces. In fact, there's no problem with parking there. So yeah, with this site, we probably have about 250 people on the door system and about 100 people, 80 to 100 people using the site every single day, you know, at any one time.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry about that intervention last time. It's a question based on the service vehicles attending the site. I know that's not been mentioned by the presentation, but has Mr. Tyrrell's there, maybe he could answer. On the proposed site plan, you show what appear to be a service vehicle turning in the top right-hand corner. However, when you come to the proposed ground floor plan, that appears to be marked as parking spaces. Can you just clarify, please?
Thank you, Councillor Reid. It's probably a question for Steve Jenkins, our traffic consultant. I'm looking at the ground floor plan. And the turning area we've shown is in the top corner of the site. Could you just clarify where you think the conflict is?
Sorry, Councillor Reid, could you use your microphone, please?
Apologies. If you drive in, you drive up on the what I would call the right-hand side. That corner on where the parking is, on the proposed site plan, you've got what appears to be a vehicle turning point for service vehicles, but on the next drawing, the ground floor plan, it appears to be all parking. Can you just clarify?
I think the ground floor plan doesn't show the full extent of the site, so it's not showing the turning head, which is further north on that.
I think
plan.
I think it's just
Okay.
the plans had the bit.
Just the way we've
If you,
plans.
if you refer back to the site plan, you can the turning head is gone.
Thank you.
Clearly on there. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Earl.
Lovely. Councillor Williams? Yes, all right. May I
Right.
ask another question? Thank you.
In the report on page 25, in regards to the Hampshire Minerals and Waste Plan, it states that there was no sort of consideration from that point of view in regards to the site itself, but also the buffer zone. I was just wondering, sort of, why that hadn't been considered, especially as it's a material planning consideration for us.
Thank you. It's a good question. I don't know why our minerals consideration that we've recently carried out doesn't appear in your update sheet, but we have provided that information now. What I would say is that in the kind of 6 months of pre-application that we did, that was never mentioned to us. The application was validated and it wasn't mentioned to us then. And in the 7 months of consideration of the planning application, it wasn't mentioned. So it's only mentioned a few weeks before we've come to this committee, at which point we instructed minerals consultants to look at 2 things, which we were asked to look at. First, the mineral safeguarding area. So what Hampshire County Council Minerals do is they put a big blue blob on a plan, but then you employ minerals consultants to look at that a bit more closely, and they do that by looking at the British Geological Survey, and that it was very clear that there is no resource under this site. So that's the end of that consideration. The other point we were asked to consider is the impact on whether this would have any impact on the operation of the waste management facilities nearby, Four Dells, and the Veolia site, and asked to talk to the operators about that. So we've got. We would have seen the letters of support we've got, but we've got one objection from Veolia, and that relates to traffic. But we've had our traffic consultant deal with that, and Hampshire County Council have no issues with that. In terms of other things like noise or dust issues, the nearest site is a significant distance, and because of that there's not going to be any impacts on the operation of those waste management facilities. So we have considered that, and I was hoping that that would be in the update sheet, but unfortunately it's not.
Well, you've updated us now, so thank you very much for that. Yes, your microphone is still on. Thank you. Are there any more questions, members? Thank you so much. That was very helpful. If you'd like to return to your seats, thank you. So we turn to Catherine Watson and our planning team. Would you like to update us on what you've heard before we go to questions on the report, please?
I'll take this, Chair, because I think we've had an awful lot from lots of different people and lots of different very specific details about the InQ Hive model. So I just wanted to sort of summarise how we're recommending that is dealt with in a plan-led framework. So we've had lots about individual needs and the unique business model of InQ Hive. However, fundamentally, what this is in planning terms is a town centre use. It falls now under Class E. And so looking at the specific issues, I think with the InQ Hive model, planning terms, we have to keep looking at this as uncontrolled Class E office use, town centre use that is we're requesting a countryside location for. So that is how to consider moving forward through the debate, all the matters that I think you've heard a lot of things about today. Adrian's team worked hard so that we can try to deal with thousands of individual needs for particular types of uses across our whole district. And so we can't deal with them on a case-by-case basis. That has to come forward through a plan-led approach, not by a site owner who has a site that could be available. That isn't how you can demonstrate a countryside location or need for a countryside location. And I think finally, if you look through the report, the approach to tackle a lot of these complex issues is set out in there. And so it sets out sort of step by step the policy issues. On page 19, you've got the other relevant documents. There's been lots of considerations through the economic development team, through the planning agent and the documentation that's been coming forward at the sort of end of the process. Contributions in respect of the Winchester District Green Economic Development Strategy, the Economic Development Strategy, and that's listed as other relevant documents. And that by that nature of that means it's not part of our development plan. And so what we're fundamentally looking at is the weight of the development plan and all these issues that aren't so weighty. And I think I'd like to just leave that there. That if you want to look into the policy issues more, that will come up through debate, and then we can refer to page 20 and 21, which does deal with that helpfully. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Lorna. Okay, Kat, so we will now move to questions on the report, members. It's not too long, so we'll take questions on the entire report. Councillor Williams.
It was just a follow-up really to my last question that I just posed in regards to any mitigating measures. I know in the report that it says we haven't had any from the applicant. I was just wondering if there was anything that what we would normally expect in regards to a mitigation plan for the waste processing facility.
Thank you, Chair. It sets out on page 25 under the minerals and waste section. The minerals and waste team at Hampshire County Council have suggested mitigation measures which should focus on impacts such as noise, dust, visual impact, odour and traffic movements. And they've gone on to state that these can take the form of landscape design, tree planting, barriers, building design, etc. So it does set out in that section what type of mitigation measures would be appropriate in this instance.
The follow-up. So would I be right in thinking that because that sort of mitigation plan hasn't been provided, then it doesn't meet the Hampshire County Council policy in that regard?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Lee.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wonder if you could say something about the biodiversity net gain. Appreciate obviously the legislation for that doesn't come into next year, but clearly there is a loss of trees, there is loss of grass and so on. Is there a sort of an understanding of what the net gain or improvements are with the landscaping that is planned? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I do have the figures for this. There will be a small net gain of I think it's just over 1% for the total site. I can't find my figure, unfortunately. At the moment, as you'll be aware, there's no statutory requirement to have biodiversity net gain, although in our policy, local plan policy CP16, which covers biodiversity, it's strongly encouraged. So there is a net gain. That will take the form. So the trees on site are obviously an existing. The woodlands also is an existing habitat. That would be managed more, and the trees that are proposed to be replaced, taken out. There's the blue cedar, and then it's a Lawson cypress, which I think members would have seen on site. There was a query about the two large trees at the top of the site, which are a beech and a blue cedar. Those will be retained and protected. Also wildflower meadows, there'll be a swale and so forth. So all that contributes towards increasing biodiversity net gain. It is a small amount, but it is a positive amount. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I can't allow you to speak from the back of the room. Councillor Lamy.
Yes, I'd like a little bit of guidance on what Ms Hutchins said. I thought we were trying to encourage people to live and work in the same area to enhance the villages and make life more sustainable in those areas. So how does that affect by MTRA4?
Thank you, Chair. There's lots of aspirations of the council and the policy team to deal with these needs. We do want to encourage these things, but we can't respond to individual case-by-case basis across the countryside to look at very, very localised need. It has to be done through a planned approach, which Adrian's team are dealing with. And if I just take you through pages 20 and 21, that's how we have to provide for that need. There can be cases that there could be an exception if there was merit to that. In this case, there is some merit in lots of what we're hearing. However, the resulting outcome is that it is unchecked speculative office development in the countryside that gives your local planning authority and the reason for your office's recommendation that it sets a very strong precedent to be allowing individual sites like this across the whole of our district, because we cannot find a way to separate the use of this through a legal mechanism to restrict this and find the merits of this site in this case to separate it from anything else across the countryside. So that's the reasons for the recommendation. If you want me to explain further, the future needs for employment land has been considered in both adopted and the emerging plans. That's one of the paragraphs on page 20. And so it leads you through that we feel that the delivery of the employment land in the authority monitoring reports has been delivered pretty effectively. But we have to consider, how do we deal with things like this? So we've got further evidence of employment land like being looked at through employment land study there. And we're doing a refresh of our employment land our employment assessment needs, which Adrian is currently working through at the moment, to look at things like this. And fundamentally, we've got big sites such as Sun Lane, Sir John Moore Barracks, Bushville Camp down the road, which in Bushville Camp, we haven't settled on final uses there. The opportunity to deal with things like that is to get engaged with the local planning authority in these big sites, these big opportunities that could be there. And we haven't had that through this planning application. It says in the update sheet from further correspondence from the agents team, it's not accepted that a sequential test is required as part of the client's needs. However, they have prepared one for committee, but this is the end of the process. It looks at sites they've looked at, but it doesn't explain sequentially for a town-based centre use. Why can't it go at Wynn or at Sun Lane and all these other sites to deal with these? They're going to be individual needs sort of popping up as well. So I heard that sort of explains the plan-led approach to deal with these things fairly, but then not of such a way that it would enable the district boundary and our settlement edges to expose ourselves to speculative new build in the countryside in this way.
Yeah, I mean, I was only looking at to encourage employment within the village for the villages.
And that's what we want to do. And this is a broad, complex planning framework, and that's the right way to do things.
Can I just ask, on page 2 of our update sheet, one of the proposals is that conditions could keep this as specifically for InQ Hive and specifically for the sort of business that is being proposed by InQ Hive, which, as we all agree, is very laudable. So can you explain to me if that is possible?
Certainly, Chair. There's strong advice not to attach personal permissions because it devalues the property. It ties the owners and the occupants into really unreasonable circumstances in the future. And we can't specify for those sort of legal reasons. And all we would end up with is a Class E use, which we might narrow down to perhaps an employment use or an office space use on the site. But that's the same for every sort of other development. And so what you will end up with is a condition that doesn't pass the test, that's legally unsound, doesn't restrict anything. So it is an ineffective, that's an unacceptable position for this local planning authority to be in. Do you want to say anything else with that legal down? Thank you.
I think, members, if you're looking at the issue of conditions and the points been put to you in the update sheet about this can be controlled by a condition, the MPPF is probably the starting point here. So paragraph 55 outlines how you approach this issue of conditions. The very first sentence says local planning authority should, that means you have to consider whether otherwise unacceptable development could be made acceptable through the use of conditions. So here you have a policy objection outlined in the officer report that this is unacceptable due to policy reasons. Now, be that as it may, could a condition overcome that policy objection? And as Lorna's already said, this will ultimately be a Class E use. Some of the tests also outlined in the MPPF go on to say that they should be kept to a minimum and they should only be imposed when necessary, relevant to planning, relevant to the development to be permitted, enforceable, precise and reasonable. Now, you've heard the applicant here that this is an incubation type space, a startup type space, an accelerator business type space, small business type space. How could the planning department enforce the type of businesses that go into that particular office? Ultimately, it's a Class E office. So to limit it to InQ Hive specifically, or to limit it to startup businesses, what is the definition of that? How would enforcement be able to enforce the particular tenants? Are you a startup? Are you accelerator business? Are you an incubation type business? It would be a hugely massive undertaking for enforcement to actually see whether or not that particular business is indeed an incubation business. So it's a matter for you members, but obviously you have to bear in mind the MPPF, those tests, reasonable, precise, enforceable, relevant to planning and so on. It's not for me to advise you one way or another. My job is to give you and equip you with all the tools to make the right decision. That is as far as we could probably go. If you were to push me, I can provide an opinion, but that's the test. In this particular regards, the key one would probably be the enforceability of that particular condition. Also, going back to the first point I made, conditions should only be used to make an otherwise unacceptable development acceptable. Here, you've got an in principle policy objection that this is unacceptable. Thank you, members.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
It probably didn't go unnoticed amongst us here, the headlines this morning about the impact of the cost of transport, which I think is a factor in terms of trying to facilitate and generate, in economic activity. But one of the officers can just highlight to me, what is the situation with respect to sustainable transport here into this area, or from this area where the demand is into the city? Is there any likelihood of that improving, which might help us to make a judgment on what we're considering here?
Thank you, Chair. The proposals have come before Hampshire County Council Highways, so they've looked at transport issues, including sustainable transport. I don't know what the impact of this specific site would be on the city. It's not something that we would look at. Obviously, the applicant's transport assessment has looked at vehicles leaving, parking spaces, people leaving the site, provision of EV charging spaces. Although there's only 2 parking space EV spaces on site that would be ready to use. It's also looked at cycle routes and things like that. So in terms of providing some method of sustainable transport, there is some allowance for that within this site, but it's not known what the wider impact of that would be sort of further afield, really.
Thank you. I probably didn't phrase my question very well. I'm thinking about the deterrent, stopping people from using transport, affordable transport, to get into the city, and therefore the demand obviously is to try and do something locally. Do we have any sense of what might be coming down the line in terms of improvements to facilitate easier, cheaper transport into the city?
So I'm not aware that any proposals have come forward suggesting that there could be something very specific that would help unlock and improve sort of sustainability issue. That isn't part of the proposal. What if this was to be recommended for approval, there would have needed to have been a travel plan to mitigate some of these things, and could have explored that then. I know Adrian doesn't consider this site unsustainable. However, we are edge of settlement, and there isn't an easy way to get in. Nothing has come forward in the proposal. We also have a procedural issue because the travel plan would need a legal agreement. We don't have any heads of terms for that, and we don't have any procedural time to deal with that within the time frame that we have this application. No agreements to extend the time have come forward. Thank you.
Right, I think we've covered members' questions on the report. Yes, so shall we move into debate? Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. This is a difficult case, I think, for this committee. Almost all of us have visited the site. We've read the officer's recommendation and papers presented to us, and also we've received a number of comments from the applicant for further information. I think there's much to like here. The innovative, imaginative design of the buildings and their settings within the local landscape are to be commended, in my opinion, together with the aspiration for high environmental standards. And a lot of work has been done, as we've heard, by the applicant, and some experience gained already with an innovative business model to support startups. I can imagine that in principle, the Winchester district economy would benefit from more high quality, affordable space for startups. But in my mind, it remains the case that this land is outside the settlement boundary. And we do have a very clear policy about protecting our countryside. And I would suggest also trying to concentrate what I might loosely call knowledge economy work in places where it can relate to its immediate surroundings, where networks can be built. Now, this site is open countryside. It's albeit used as a residential garden, and as we heard, it suffers from considerable noise pollution by the M3, but these factors don't change its designation. I can't see that any of the possible exemptions under MTRA 4 would apply in this case. I don't think the applicant would suggest that they do. So, in my view, this is an attractive proposal in the wrong place, and to approve it would create a damaging precedent. We've heard specialist advice and also legal opinion just now to the effect that conditioning a class of use or a type of occupancy would not realistically be enforceable in future on this site. I think we have to treat that seriously. And so, with some sadness, I'm not minded to support the application.
Thank you. Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. I too am having difficulty with this one. There's a lot, as Councillor Williams has said, and I agree with a lot of what Councillor Williams has said, that there's a lot to be said for this. At a ridge height of 10.2 meters, however, and a footprint of 50 square meters, plus car parking for 96 vehicles, this is a large and a bulky, extensive commercial building, and in my view, in a non-sustainable countryside location. Of the 55 expressions of interest supplied by the applicant to all of us, only 3 are from Otterbourne settlement, 6 are from Hursley, and the rest come from some distance away. The 96 spaces would quickly fill up, impacting the safety of road users on Poles Lane. It's on an undeveloped land outside the settlement boundary of Otterbourne and in the countryside, and therefore a raft of policies apply. DS1, MTR 834, and CP8 of the LPP1, and DM1 and DM10 of the LPP2. We have to protect the edges of our settlements and resist the pressure for encroachment and spread into the countryside. There is no essential need for this development in this location, nor a need for additional employment land in the area. I also have major concerns about the considerable precedent that might be set throughout the district by going against all these policies. I would have loved to have been able to support this imaginative business hub, but basically, ladies and gentlemen, it's in the wrong place. I will be supporting the officer's decision to refuse the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. There are 2 areas that I'm really concerned about. One is this sustainable drainage. In the report, it says it's flood zone 1 at very low risk. Whilst that may be true of the site, the general area does have a flooding problem, I've been led to believe. The road, when weather gets really bad, is subject to closure on many occasions. And I think this was confirmed by the local councillor as well. The other one, Chair, is the fact that this is on a 60-mile-an-hour road. Anybody driving at 60 miles an hour needs their head seen to at that point in the point anyway. However, I did pull into 2 of the roads, one opposite and one adjacent to the application site. And I must admit the speed that some people were travelling was somewhat alarming. And trying to get out, it was a steady flow of traffic in both directions. So for further down the road, adjacent to the motorway, we're proposing, or it is being proposed, a vehicle access that will accommodate 96 vehicles. Admittedly, they're not all going to move at the same time. Well, at least I would hope not anyway. I was very appreciative of the site visit. It's not often we go to a site visit where the recommendation is to refuse. So I now understand why that decision was made and fully support it, because it did open my eyes. It also closed my ears down listening to the traffic noise, which was horrendous. Now, I know people that live in that type of area. They're become accustomed to that noise, but it nonetheless is a very serious noise to contend with. The design, the style, and the layout look super. But as Councillor Cunningham said, unfortunately, it's in the countryside. It's outside of the development area. And I agree with Councillor Cunningham and I think with Councillor Edwards that to put this application forward and approve it would set a precedent that would be very, very difficult to stop. English law is set on precedent. And if we set that precedent, we could be opening a whole floodgate of locations in the wrong place. So unfortunately, Chairman, I love the design, as I've said. I think it's absolutely magic, just the wrong place. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Councillor Gordon-Smith.
Yes, I rather echo Councillor Reid's sentiments. I think it's an interesting building and it's a good location. It doesn't have much impact on the surrounding area. I think the model proposed for the leasing of these things on the short term and low rent is very effective. And I think we recognise in Winchester that there is that big problem between academic institutions and then people who've trained there then leaving. I mean, that's what Central Winchester is about. It's trying to reverse that. But we do come across this big problem. Well, there's two problems. One is the internal spaces are flexible, so they can be opened up. And of course, the market for offices does change. You know, a market which we had 10 years ago for big offices has disappeared. You know, in America, the WeWork has gone bankrupt, hugely successful office leasing. So who could tell what sort of economic pressures would be on in 15 years' time? And you do come up against this big full stop that it's against MTR 4A, and I don't think we can allow it for these conditions. Thank you.
Councillor Laming, sorry, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think that this is a very innovative application. I've been involved in startup businesses over many years, and the financial model of this is really good. I think the design of the building is really good, and I'd love to see it because I think it promotes employment within the villages, which is something that we desperately need. But unfortunately, we are up against policy. And if we let this one go through, that opens the floodgates to many other things. I'm really quite disappointed that I'm having to take this line because I think it's such an innovative way of helping start up businesses that we desperately need. And it's just unfortunate.
Councillor Lee.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, to again echo some of the previous comments, particularly Councillor Laming's comments just a minute ago. Somebody who's benefited from this type of startup facility, I recognise the need, much needed, particularly in our district. However, I think the precedent is very worrying, and although I'd like to support it, I think the precedent would be a step too far. Therefore, I fear that I cannot support the application.
Thank you. Of course, yes, thank you. I will be supporting the officer recommendation. The new local plan is going to be a bit more flexible and hopefully will be able to enable such innovative and imaginative and constructive proposals as this, perhaps a little more wriggle room. So please do negotiate, talk to the City Council about improvements, changes in the new local plan, but that is not yet a planning consideration. If we're worried about the noise, that's an awful lot of land in Winchester district that is affected by the noise from motorways and other dual carriageways. We can't develop all of it as office space. And our development area boundaries, it's a red line, not a grey line or a fuzzy line. It's a very definite red line. This is in the countryside. I'm afraid it's a wonderful proposal, but it's the wrong place. Okay, members, shall we move to the vote? So this application is recommended for refusal. Can I see all those in favour of the officer recommendation? I believe that's all members. Thank you very much. We'll take a 5-minute break now and return with the next application. Thank you. Okay, members, if you could take your seats, we'll start again now. Thank you. So our next item on this morning's agenda, item number 7, is a new external link, cladding, signage and internal remodelling and modernisation at 5 Bridge Street, Winchester. And these are amended plans. And our presenting officer is Eva Bryant. Welcome, Eva. And if you'd like to give us your presentation now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this application refers to 5 Bridge Street, which is also Kyoto Kitchen. The application is for an external linkway, wooden cladding on the front and side elevations, and some additional signage and remodelling. However, the key issue we wish members to consider today is the removal of the existing tile hanging, which will be required in order to, and the erection of vertical timber.
I'm sorry, could you just move the microphone a bit closer? You've got a very lovely light voice. It's a bit quiet. Thank you.
Sorry, the erection of timber cladding on the front and side elevations in a contemporary style. So on the location plan here, you can see that the site sits at the junction of Bridge Street and Chesil Street. Number 5 Bridge Street itself is a turn-of-the-century public house. It has distinctive timber framing on the west elevation and a tile-hung front elevation. It was identified as a non-designated heritage asset as part of the Future 50 project. On the aerial photograph here, you'll see number 5 Bridge Street is in the centre there on the mini roundabout at that junction. There are a number of listed buildings nearby, including numbers 1 to 4 Bridge Street, the City Mill. To the south you have the Chesil Rectory, Chesil House, and to the west the Rising Sun. To the east, sorry, the Rising Sun pub. On the elevation plan, members will be able to see at the top there you have the existing north and south elevations with the existing tile hanging at first floor level. This will be replaced under the proposed scheme with the vertical timber cladding in a contemporary style. On this plan, you have the existing at the top there and the proposed west elevation, which runs along Water Lane. At the top, you have the existing original timber framing. This will be covered up by the proposed cladding. You may also be able to notice that there are a couple of other smaller elements to the proposal, including some signage near the doors and at the rear, as well as some timber fencing and screening of the bin storage area. On the floor plans here, the existing and proposed floor plans, you can see the applicant is also proposing some internal works. However, these don't require planning permission. There are 2 views here of the building from Bridge Street. In the first photograph there, you can see the triple gabled front elevation with its tile hanging. Beyond that sits the listed buildings at numbers 1 to 4 Bridge Street, and beyond that is the Guildhall in the distance there. In the second photograph, you can see the timber framed west elevation. Beyond that is the timber framed listed Chesil Rectory. Beyond that is the Rising Sun pub. This is the view of the building from Chesil Street. You can see the distinctive triple gabled front elevation. The 2 gables on the left-hand side are the subject of this application. The third gable is number 6 Bridge Street, which is in separate ownership. Fronting directly onto the junction here, it's a landmark building. It's highly visible as we come down Chesil Street entering the city. The tile hanging is also considered possible habitat for bats. It's original clay tile, traditional clay tiles, Some of these are broken. It's a south-facing elevation, and it's within around 25 metres of a water source. This is the second given reason for refusal. This is a view of the building from Water Lane. This is a well-used footpath and cycle route that connects through to Bridge Street and onto the city and to the river. In this position, you can see the outbuilding at the rear there, and you can see the west elevation, the timber framing. This is another view of the building from the west elevation, showing the original timber framing. This is the view that you would get from both Water Lane and as you approach from Bridge Street. This is the bin storage areas. The applicant is proposing some screening and gates on in this area. And this is the just photograph of the internal courtyard. There are some smaller elements of the proposal here. Cladding of the existing spiral staircase being one of them. This wouldn't be visible from the public realm as it's screened by the existing building. So to conclude, number 5 Bridge Street is a distinctive and prominent building, and the proposed development is considered unsympathetic. It will lead to the loss and obscuring of characteristic architectural details and materials, and will cause harm to this non-designated heritage asset and the conservation area. As such, the application is recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We now move to the public speaking, and we have one public speaker, the supporter, Ms. Keum. If you'd like to come forward. Thank you. You have 3 minutes, and the timer will start when you start speaking, and the microphone is switched on by the button at the bottom of the unit. That's it. Perfect.
Thank you very much. Excuse me. Before I speak, I did send some visuals in to the planning team. Would it be possible to just show those? Perfect. And you can scroll through them. Okay. Well, if you scroll through them again, thank you. That one's quite useful. We'll leave it on there. Firstly, can I say, please, Chair, that listening to the previous application, there's a really wonderful letter in the Hampshire Chronicle last week saying how vibrant Winchester is as a business centre with the range of different offers it has in the nighttime economy. And it's really wonderful to hear the opinions of the committee here and how supportive they are of business and particularly startup businesses. This has been a labour of love for me. After being in Parchment Street for 11 years, it was a really big decision to move to a new location. And my wife is actually jealous because I am in love with this building. It's been a massive project, and you can see over the last 20, 30 years how neglected the property had been. And I didn't plan to, but I actually ended up spending a lot of time and money in not just refurbishing, but actually renovating the whole property, including upgrading all of the fire safety, the electrics, a lot of the internal structural side of things, not like pillars and things, but renovating and redecorating the whole building. It's fascinating. It's got so much character and charm. The refusals were based on changing the external kind of look of the property. And I actually take issue with the word contemporary, because timber cladding is something that goes back centuries, if not millennia, in this country. Timber cladding is sympathetic and original. The photos highlight that the timber western elevation look is fake, unlike the Chesel Rectory. And you can see from this photo that the triple gauged kind of consistency look is something also that's very recent. So the property has been allowed to evolve over time. And just in the last 100 years, as these photos show, it's changed considerably. And all we're requesting is that we, as a small independent business, are allowed to do the same. The business, the exterior facade should reflect the business that's currently there. And we are very proud that we've managed to convert a lovely old English coach house into a Japanese style inn. And we want to continue waving the flag for independent businesses. And it makes an impression as you come into the city to see something that is modern, aesthetically pleasing, and sympathetic to the building, which is our objective.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to see your passion for our wonderful historic Winchester. Can I have questions or clarification, members? Thank you, Councillor Lamy.
Thank you, Chair. How old is the building then? How old is the building?
Not entirely sure, but we think it's sort of around 1850, 1859 that it was originally built. So not as old as the Chesel Rectory for sure.
Yeah.
The current building, that is, sir.
Any more questions, members? No, thank you so much. You may return to your seat now. Thank you. Okay, that's the end of our public speaking. Now, I do know that we have our historical officer, Daniel Eyre, with us. If you'd like to come forward, I'm sure that you, if members have got questions that you can help with, that will be fine. Thank you. Did you want to add anything, Amy, before we move to questions formally?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just mention that it may be touched upon, but the heritage report that was submitted by the applicant indicates that the building was built around 1900. This photograph that you'll see shows an earlier building that was on the site. The existing building, the timber framing is original to the 1900 building, the detailing.
Okay, members. So we have our historical officer as well as our planning officer who can answer questions if necessary. Do we have any questions, members? Thank you, Councillor Lee.
Yeah, I wonder if you could just comment on the previous comments about the evolving nature of the city. And we're obviously objecting with respect to the vertical cladding. Can you just unpack that for me as to why you think that's a step too far? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. That is a very relevant and prescient point. In dealing with any application relating to a historic building or within the historic environment, it's not so much a question of precluding change, demanding that a building or site remains as it is now. It's a question of managing that change to understand what is it that makes that historic place important, valuable, significant, characterful, to try and ensure that any decisions that we make today are based on a thorough understanding of that significance, so that we are not making decisions today that those who come after us will regret. We often see with many places in the past that things have happened which we would now do differently. So the whole process of managing change in the historic environment today is about understanding that what's important and what's characterful, so that we don't do things that people regret in the future. In thinking about Winchester and why this particular building is important, obviously our businesses throughout the high street and the city centre are successful, not only because of the entrepreneurial spirit of the people who run them, but also because of the quality and calibre of our built environment, of which historic buildings such as this are a really important part. Thank you.
You mentioned valuable and characterful. I mean, some of these things are rather subjective, aren't they? And so again, do you really think this is going to devalue the historical feel and character of the area?
Yes, we do. We've highlighted in Eva's very fluent report why we think that this tile hanging is important as a landmark building as one travels northwards along Chesil Street. It may be tempting to look at this as a standalone, relatively modest proposal, but we have to be mindful if we let this happen here, what does this open the doors to elsewhere?
Okay, thank you, Daniel, and thank you, members. So we'll now move to debate. Any? Councillor Lamy.
Thank you, Chair. We all know this building quite well because it's very visible when we come into the city. I think the building itself needed complete renovation. I think we've done a really good job on that. It's the actual visual impact in the area that I'm concerned with, as it's the main gateway into the city from that end. And I don't see how the wood cladding fits in with the rest of the environment. I should be supporting the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Lee.
Yes, I have some sympathy for the need to upgrade, and clearly I understand the impact in terms of character, etc. It's often a conundrum, isn't it, whereby you want to manage and nourish your wonderful historic building, but that comes at a cost. So, sometimes there's a need to future-proof. Materials change. The way that we look at a building changes, and so I just wonder whether the owner of the building is trying to do something which arguably some would say is a step forward because it's going to be a more sustainable solution. I've had hanging tiles before, and they're a bit of a pain, frankly. I understand they were very characterful, so I have some sympathy. And I just wonder, is there any precedent which we might apply here in terms of material change, think about sustainability and so on? Yeah.
That was a question rather than debate, I'm afraid, Councillor Lee, but did you want to just make a comment on that?
I think in terms of aiding the debate further, I just wanted to sort of crystallise the arguments and how we have to consider heritage in a wider framework and the public benefit. That's an extremely important test. You've heard from the heritage manager that he's identified quite significant harm with the impact of this on the building itself. My assessment of it, and the photographs don't do justice, the quality and the cohesion of those spaces through the materials. I saw the artist on the street yesterday. He really brought out the textures and the beauty of that space in the area. There's no business case for this need for this business to run effectively because of this cladding. It's quite acceptable. It's style and aspiration. And that's like wonderful, as Dan picked up on as well with our local people in the area. But legally, there's no business case. There has to be a public benefit to outweigh that harm. There isn't that, and so it does fail on that legal test to be able to recommend it. Notwithstanding that, we have no basis to ensure that our protected species are protected through the process if there should be timber cladding. And so that's your second reason your officers are recommending refusal. So I hope that aids the debate a bit if you want to continue. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lorna. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. It's an interesting one, this, because as the applicant said, there are other buildings that have had cladding in the past. However, I would suggest that the majority of the cladding in the past is trying to copy the 18th century way of cladding a building, and that is shipyard cladding, which is horizontal. The modern day cladding is vertical, and I think it tends to upset the structure of the building, in my view. It's in a wonderful location. I must go along with the officer's recommendation on this one. I think it would detract from the building greatly if it was to be carried out.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to say I very much like to, recommend thank you for the work that you've done inside the building in bringing it to modern standards, and cherishing the historical building itself, and the fact that you can do the internal changes without needing planning permission is good. So you can carry on and do that and carry on improving things. But I do support the officers' concerns about the impact of the changes on the outside. But I'm sure that you can continue to cherish the building without those. Who have got? Oh yes, Councillor Gordon Smith wanted to join debates. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I think one of the things is that as proposed, there's going to be there's three gables in effect, one on one building, and two of them are going to have this vertical cladding and the next one isn't, and it's going to look like a bit like a dog's breakfast. I'd also say tile hanging is actually a very effective wall cladding. I appreciate that some of them have come loose. Quite a number of the tiles have come loose on that building, and it probably has to be redone. But that's also a good opportunity to upgrade the insulation, and the battens underneath on which the tiles are hung are probably pretty ropey too. But to me, keeping that look is very important, and I appreciate that the half timbered bit on the side is fake, and people rather laugh at that now and call it bypass Tudor, don't they? But actually it is a very well integrated style across the city. So I'm afraid I agree with the officer's recommendation. However, I would like to wish Mr. Caillou every success with his restaurant, and I've enjoyed visits to the other one, his old one in Archmont Street in the past.
So we should all agree to go at some stage. Right, thank you, members. Is that it for debate? So we now move to the decision. So this application is recommended for refusal. Can I see those in favour of refusing this application? Again, that's all members. Thank you very much indeed. Right, thank you. Right, we now move on to the next application, which is item number 8 on our agendas. Just got to change around our presenting officer. Lanston Close, Winchester. And our presenting officer is Cameron Finch. Before Cameron, you speak, if I could just say, one of our objectives is hard of hearing. So if we could all consciously speak clearly and closely to our microphones so that it's easy for her to hear exactly what's going on. I think generally we should do that anyway, but thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the application is to remove the existing roof, install a new roof with pitched roof dormers to create a first floor loft extension with a single story extension to the front elevation of the ground floor, and then build a new 2-bay garage building with workshop and then home office at the first floor level. So we start off with the location plan, the outline of the site in red. It gives an idea of the immediate pattern of development on Lanston and then slightly further afield along Dean Lane, and then Dean Close also just off to the west. So then we have the aerial photograph, which shows that slightly clearer. So mark the site there, and then showing the pattern of development on Lanston Close, Dean Lane, and Dean Close. So then we have a proposed site plan. So on there you can see marked up the extension to the property. So going up at the first floor, the dormer windows are marked on there as well. And then the proposed single-storey front extension with a flat roof. And then towards the southeastern end of the site, you have the proposed two-bay garage. So we come to the existing elevations of the bungalow as it is. So at the moment, single-storey, all on one level. And these are the existing floor plans. So now we come to the proposed elevations for the dwelling. So this includes the extension to the roof to provide the loft conversion. You can see 3 gabled dormers there on the front, 2 on the rear. Height increase of approximately 2 meters, coming in just shy of 8 meters. We also have the single-storey front extension there, extends approximately 4.2 meters forwards. Wall finishes, as members may remember from Monday, at the ground floor level up to the floor level on the ground is in grey brick, and then above that is a white render, and then a slate roof coverings. And then we have the proposed floor plans, so extension putting bedrooms into the first floor element. And then we have a 3D visual, and this is just to sort of give you an impression of what it would look like in 3D when completed. So again, this shows the front elevation looking out towards Lanston Close. So here we have the proposed garage elevations and the floor plans here. So using a roof form, hipped roof form to match the dwelling, also matching materials here as well. The 1.5 story style, it goes approximately 3.2 meters in height. We have a small gabled dormer on the northern facing elevation there, and then you can see the 2 roof lights in the southern facing elevation too. And then we have proposed site sections, so just showing the garage at slightly lower ground level as it would be on the site in the front garden in comparison with the dwelling. We then also have an indicative landscaping plan of the front garden, which demonstrates how the front garden would be replanted and potentially enhanced on completion of the development. So the next few slides, I'm going to go back through sort of some of the views that we had a look at when we visited on Monday, just to give an impression of how it would appear. So these are long range views along Lanston Close, looking towards the dwelling. So you can just see it would be partially obscured by trees, but it's just to the left in these pictures. And then we move closer to the end of the close when the dwelling comes into view, and also including its neighbour there, Lanston. This is then an image from the neighbouring garden, just showing the rear elevation. We then have an image from 18 Close, which is the neighbouring property behind, sits at a slightly higher ground level. So this is from their patio area looking out towards Beaufort, and you should just be able to see the roof of it just there in the background. We have another site photograph from Lanston Close. This is more orientated towards where the proposed garage would be. then we have the concrete slab, which just demarks where the garage would be. It's begun construction there. And then finally, just some wider context, so not on Lanston, but just within the surrounding area. So these are on Dean Lane, of just some slightly similar developments that have taken place, and a character sort of becoming characterful of this area of Winchester. In conclusion, the recommendation is to permit. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Cameron. And as you just briefly mentioned, the committee did take a site visit on Monday morning to have a look at this and the context and the whole close. Right, so first public speakers are our objectors, Julian and Ilfra Carlick and John Blake. If you would all like to come forward, are you all speaking? Are you Mr. Blake?
No.
You're Mr. Carlick. Okay. Are you going to speak on behalf of the three of you? Lovely. Thank you. So you have 3 minutes, and the time will start when you start speaking. And this is Mr. Blake. And are you going to share the 3 minutes?
No. No.
You're just speaking. Mr. Blake is here to answer questions.
Yes.
Lovely. Thank you
Yes.
very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you. This presentation is based on consultation and agreement with the neighbours. Lanston Close is a small close of bungalows coming off Dean Lane, close to the edge of Winchester. Its architectural vernacular contributes to the community spirit. The house proposed is 2 metres higher than any existing buildings. Its dominance would make it totally out of place, with the garage office itself being higher than the houses. Unlike Dean Lane, Lanston Close has no through traffic, no 2-storey dwellings, no double garages, and no buildings in the front of the bungalows. It cannot and should not be compared to Dean Lane. The Joint Core Strategy document, paragraph CP13, states that proposals should respond to neighbours' local context after full consultation. No proper consultation with neighbours took place prior to the application. In particular, in April 2023, mature trees were felled and hedges grubbed up, all against the stated wishes of the neighbours. The existing landscape and amenity is being ignored. Recovery of that destruction will take years. Looking at the materials proposed, the red brick and white stucco walls of the existing buildings spread harmony throughout Lanston Close. The black bricks of the proposal and the black slated roof and grey aluminium window frames do nothing to match or enhance the semi-rural nature of the close. Now, we recognise the need for change, but only within the scale of the existing buildings. The latest extension in the close, built in the last 2 years, followed existing parameters. Accordingly, there were no objections. For Beaufort, there are 14 objections, including from the City of Winchester Trust. The siting of the garage office is particularly bad, as indicated in the Winchester City Council High Quality Places Supplementary Planning Document, page 14. There, a diagram shows a big red cross placed over a building equivalent to the garage office proposed, expressing much better than words that buildings and the front gardens are not appropriate. The community and neighbours of Lanston Close value the amenity and landscape nurtured by its residents over the last 60 years, along with its role in contributing to Winchester as a whole. The proposed buildings would destroy this amenity. We most strongly urge the Planning Committee to share our values and reject the application. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for keeping to your time so well. Members, do we have questions of clarification for the objectors? Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chairman. You stated...
Can I just remind you about speaking loudly and close, a bit closer to the mic?
You don't have to remind me, believe me. I I'm just looking for the appropriate photograph. There's a photograph in the pack that shows the site, and in Dean Lane, there is a property which is virtually adjacent to the application site, which appears to have a roof line some 2 meters or so higher than the application site. Is that correct?
We're only talking about Lanston Close. As I mentioned, we are considering Lanston Close as a separate entity from Dean Lane because of its completely different character.
Fine, but you do agree that the adjacent property, which is probably the closest, has a much higher ridge line.
I'm not sure that I find that an appropriate comment to answer.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you for that overview. I appreciate your comments about scale and so on, and the change and the sort of nature aspects. What would need to be done to satisfy the neighbours in terms of perhaps trees or vegetation to mitigate what the intention is?
I think it's perfectly clear that when the recent extension was built just less than 2 years ago, it fitted the existing height and levels and scale of the close. So we would expect any further development to do this exactly the same, but not be out of scale or propose a dominant aspect, and also fit in with the harmony that we have amongst us as neighbours in the close, which we feel is an important part of living in Lanston Close, although it may not be part of the planning application. We are a close-knit community and we value and share all that we do together. This application does not represent that at all.
Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Carlick, one of the reasons you gave, I think, for objecting was the colour of the bricks. Is that correct?
Yes, it's not a grey, it's black. They're there already to see.
Are you aware that the bricks are going to be clad in a whitewash?
I was not clear about that, but I've again, my impression is that it is going to be overall a black building with black tiles on the roof. They're illustrated. You can see what proportion of the building is black.
That's the roof.
Yes, that's over twice as high as the existing dwelling.
Yeah.
The roof space is twice as much as the existing height of the dwelling. So that is very overbearing and out of keeping with all the buildings in Lanston Close.
Fine, but I just wanted to clarify that the brickwork was going to be clad. Is that correct?
That's only a small part of the project.
Okay, thank you.
It represents less than 50%.
Thank you. Any more questions of clarification, members? No? Yes.
Can I just go back to the answer?
Yes, would you like to contribute to that answer? If you could just switch your microphone off. Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you.
The main objection arises from the size of the proposal. You just heard it is 2 meters higher than the existing one. This particular drawing was filed on November the 2nd, when it should have been filed really with the application back in February. It seems to have appealed to the planning officer because he's lifted it from that November 2nd document into his own documents. But that view is a computer generated view, not taken straight on. Now, if you take an object and you look at it either from above slightly or below slightly, it will appear optically shorter than it really is. And this does not really reflect the bulk of the building.
Thank you, Mr.
A
Blake.
proper comparison would be superimposed
before and after elevations.
Thank you, Mr. Blake. We did go on a site visit. We have seen the house, we have seen the works, and we did compare the we could see how much greater it was going to be. So I think we are aware of that. But thank you for raising that issue. Okay, members, I think we're done with questions. Thank you so much for coming along. If you'd like to return to your seats now, thank you. We now have the Ward Councillor, Councillor Lerny. Good morning, Councillor Lerny. And you know the routine, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. To quote the City Council's High Quality Design SPD, at the heart of the Council's approach to achieving high quality urban design is the need for proposals to be suitably informed by and respond positively to the context. And opposition to this proposal very much hinges on local plan policy CP13 high quality design. Lanston Close, as has been mentioned, is a small cul-de-sac off Dean Lane in northwest Winchester. Unlike many neighbouring roads, it remains much as it was built. Each home varies slightly, but all a single story with a simple palette of materials: red brick, light render, or pale stone cladding and concrete tile roofs. Having talked over the years to many of the residents, they have often mentioned the amenity and community the nature of the close creates. As is so often the case for this application, context is key, and I would like to thank the committee for making a site visit earlier this week to see the close and why it should be considered as having a very different character to nearby roads. It's notable that the planning statement produced by the applicant came in over 6 months after the initial application, when it should have been the starting point, and even then it's failed to reflect the context of the new building. The materials proposed are alien to the existing homes, with the slate roof and dark windows. With reference to the roofscape, the materials and shape fail to reflect those in the rest of the close. With the building being at the highest, almost the highest point of the site, the front dormers look down the street, and again referring to the high quality places SPD. In areas where there is a high degree of uniformity of roof design in which dormers are not present, then the incorporation of dormers can be unacceptable where they would be detrimental to the street scene. At the rear of the building, with its positioning near the top of the site and the removal of trees and hedges, and incidentally a quick look at the satellite view on Google Maps will show you how much tree cover has been reduced on site. The mass of the building and the use of dormers creates an issue in connection with neighbouring 18 Close, where even if it falls within the technical limits, there will be the feeling of being overlooked, particularly in the garden, in a way which wouldn't be created by a design which incorporated Velux windows rather than dormers. The garage is also problematic. At the front of the site, it has a ground floor footprint greater than the bungalow my grandparents moved into when they retired, and the additional story takes it above the level of the neighbouring bungalow, which is in very close proximity. Again, the materials are very different to those in the rest of the street. I will finish up with not my words, but those of the City of Winchester Trust, which sum it up, I feel. The Trust finds this proposal for such a radical increase in scale and change of building character in this cul-de-sac detrimental and out of keeping with the character and context of this locality. So, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Lerny. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for the Ward Councillor? Thank you very much. You got off lightly. Okay, now we move to the supporters. That's Peter and Anne Arnold. If you'd like to come forward, please, Mr. and Mrs. Arnold. Is one of you going to speak? Mr. Arnold, lovely. Okay, well, you have 3 minutes and the time will start when you start speaking. If you'd like to switch on your microphone, That's perfect. Thank
Okay,
you.
can you hear me all right? Excellent, good stuff. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. Just to address a couple of the points that have been made previously. The building isn't 2 metres high, it's approximately 1.5. A couple of things about the original context of the close. The original roofs were all dark green, and they've all been considerably extended over the years. So extension and change in the close is very normal. Most of the buildings actually have white render on them, so that's the basic gist. Mature trees have not been removed. There's only one tree that was on our property that we took down because it was dying, because it was covered in ivy. So there's a few points I just want to correct there. All the extensions that have been done in the close are generally flat roofs. They come forward and they're quite shoeboxy in design. What we've tried to do with the design is basically take a neglected and dilapidated 60-year-old bungalow that's had the roof condemned, and bring it up to modern standards. It's completely uninsulated, it's falling apart and has to be rebuilt. Most of the area has shoebox extensions, which are frankly unattractive. They're not in keeping and they're not in the character on which the close was originally built. We're aiming to basically future-proof this house for the next 50 years so that it is insulated and usable in the context of the way people live and work going forward. Everything has been designed to reduce carbon emissions, both in use and in construction. We've recycled as much material as possible, and rather than sort of take the approach of flattening the building, we've actually tried to incorporate as much of the existing building as possible, which then again reduces the carbon impact. We have built in a lot of environmental gains. We're using grey water, sustainable water features in the house to reduce water flows, sustainable urban drainage. All of these have been built in again to minimise the impact. The house is being built to passive house standards to try and again reduce the amount of energy required in the building, make it as wholly insulated as possible, and again future-proof it, because obviously at the moment the building is, as I said, uninsulated and pretty much unlivable in its current context. The reason for the additional space in terms of the home office is both myself and my wife, we work at home a lot, and that's a feature for most people. We also have elderly relatives and elder children that will have to come back and live with us. So we do need space to be able to work in the house and work separately. So that's part of the thing. We have, as you've seen from the plans, produced extensive replanting. This has been done professionally and will produce a lot of biodiversity gains. So we have a lot of plans for boxes and all the rest of it. The existing close, as you say, is already very similar to this. We have a 3-storey garage that's been recently approved on our boundary that's been put in place. And all the properties on Dean Lane are of a very similar nature. So what we're doing is wholly in keeping with the current area. The whole proposal then picks up on passive house, solar panels, heat pumps, sustainable urban drainage, environmental improvements.
I'm sorry, you've run out of time.
That's okay.
Completely engrossed with what you were saying. Okay, members, we have questions for clarification. Councillor Lee.
Thank you for that. There clearly seems to be a difference of opinion about heights. You mentioned 1.5, 2 meters has been mentioned. Can you just unpick that for me? The 1.5 is what's the benchmark and
so the existing ridge.
Existing ridge. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Just going from the sort of bedroom size, so it's currently 3 beds from the existing floor plans, and you're going to 6. Well, yes, yeah, well, 5.5. Just one of them's there, but it was more so in regards to the garage itself, in the why the garage needs to be the 2 floors. I know obviously you've mentioned in respect to having that as the office space. Would that not be more sort of appropriate to reduce the size of the garage by its current almost two floor height, and have the office in the main building, or is that something that was sort of considered when you were putting through the planning application?
Yeah, we did consider that, obviously. What we wanted to create was separation from the house and our working environment. We both work at home, we both work in infrastructure projects, so we do need a lot of space to put a lot of drawings, a lot of equipment in place, printers and just stuff like that to work, really. So we didn't want to sort of work in a shoebox, and both of us on Teams calls all day and things like this. So it was really creating a proper workable office space.
Thank you very much. You may return to your seats now. Thank you. If you could just switch your microphone off before you go. That's it. Thank you. Cameron, is there anything you want to update us on following the public contributions? Or
yes, thank you, Chair. I think it would be useful just to clarify. There's been some. Just to clarify the height of the building. What you'll see from the elevation plans that we've got here is that the ground is not completely level. So what we've done is taken it from the point that's lowest to say the total height. So it comes in at approximately, it doesn't hit, in terms of where it comes to, the increase doesn't hit 2 meters in its totality. It is just under, it's an approximate. So it's coming in at just under 2 meters in terms of the increased height, taking it up to about 8. But as I say, depending on where you are, the ground level is slightly different. So that would be why there's a couple of sort of deviations in measurements there.
thank you. Okay, members, we'll take questions on all of the report. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chairman. If we look at photographs on page 94 showing the view up the road, we can see that there is a large evergreen tree at the front of the garden. Might it be reasonable to condition the retention of that tree? I'm assuming it's on the plot of the applicant, as a way of shielding to some extent the mass of the new building.
Chair, Cameron's just looking at the layout plan for the whole site. I think as long as you can express why you feel that that is necessary to mitigate, what harm is it mitigating, then it would be reasonable. So I think we need to explore that further in questions and debate. You're looking at the tree is the coniferous one, sort of in frontish the garage, in the corner of the red line site with the drive, I believe. So it would be reasonable in respect of land ownership, but it needs to be reasonable in respect of mitigating impact. So let's draw that out through questions.
Can I ask about CP13 and the comments of the Winchester Trust, that this is completely out of character with the other houses in the close, which is of itself a separate close. It's not a through road, so you drive in and you just see the bungalows. Can you just tell me why you felt that this proposal fits within CP13?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So it's sort of balancing the sort of context of really what's proposed. So if we just bring that up again. So when looking at the context of what's happened within the surrounding area, we're sort of looking at sort of key features that can be drawn out. Is there a relationship to the context? And whilst this is a significant increase in terms of what has gone before, there are elements of this design that do bring out parts of the context of Lanston Close. So we established extensions around there do have flat roofs. There's examples of render, and there is a slight mix of appearance in terms of various dwellings. It's also we considered how you'd view it, the sort of spatial character of the area. They are quite spatially divided, sort of defined on their own plots. So in terms of when you're viewing it, it becomes more visible as you come up Lanston Close, as we saw. But it can be viewed with the neighbouring dwellings, but also the spatial sort of density of their area is light enough that we didn't feel it would be particularly imposing. And then when we considered that they have drawn out some key features of the context of the area, that's where it sort of tips it over into being acceptable.
Okay, thank you. Members, more questions? Councillor Reid.
Chairman, sorry. The indicative landscape plan on page 92 shows some planting directly behind the garage on what I would call the southern side. Do we know what type of planting that's going to be? I expect Councillor Gordon-Smith will enlighten us.
Sorry, don't. Yes, Laura, if you could.
Thank you. We don't have a specific proposal because we wouldn't normally ask for one for a homeowner improving their site. So it is indicative. It's just an expression of the owner's wishes to aspire to some of the aspirations of the council to plant species that are appropriate and just generally upgrade the house. So it's indicative. It's not to be delivered through the regulatory service unless you feel that there's a mitigating factor, and then we can condition specific details of landscaping and that when it has to be implemented.
Thank you, Chair.
No more questions, members? Right, so we now move to debate. I'd like to kick us off. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. When you look at the site plan, it is a really peculiar shaped site. The original structure, to some degree, is out of tilt with the design of the close. It's the one house that is slightly askew from what you would expect. So working from that, what you actually start with, does determine what you can do with it in the future. Regarding the height, we've heard from the officer that the proposed height increase is under 2 metres. And if you look at page 94, that shows a structure adjacent to this, very adjacent, which is about 2 metres in height. So the height level is probably not going to be too much different in that sense. It is out of keeping with the close, one would agree, but that is a 1960s construction. The house itself on the side wall has 5 different types of brick which compose the wall, so I can well understand the reason to clad that in a render. The render is going to be white. I think it's a bit misleading if you just look at the bricks that have been laid in the extension, which are black bricks. They are going to be covered with render. As already pointed out by the applicant, there are a number of properties in the close which already have some rendering on them. So it's not out of place. There are also a lot of flat roofed structures, extensions down the road, which are probably not particularly nice to look at in general. The one thing I would agree with is the tree on the corner of the site is crucial. It does help to mask, as do all the other trees and shrubbery way down the lane, down the close. As you approach, it rises. So this particular construction is going to take place on possibly the highest part of the land. So no matter what you put there, it is going to overview to the south of it. I can see no planning reason, and we've got to judge this on planning law, I can see no planning reason for not going along with the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Lee.
We've got the, the Winchester Trust saying that this is too radical. We have the High Quality Places SPD talking about the benefits of contrasting contemporary extension, change of materials and that sort of thing. We've talked about the trees, the roofscapes. We've heard from the neighbours about how it's going to change the character. So I wonder what the compromise might be. We already mentioned one tree. We can't condition trees in other neighbours' properties. So I'm just wondering what the way forward might be to mitigate the situation with nature, trees behind the garage, to get those sight lines improved to mask perhaps some of the imposition of the changes to the character of the area.
Chair, there isn't a way to mitigate really. The only thing that we've really looked at is that one conifer. But really, I think what we're saying is, are you happy to accept the level of harm and establish what that is in this area for someone to sort of put a more modern house on a site at the end that we think has some response to different characteristics about it, and perhaps does allow the cohesion of the close to remain with a bit of a change. So there isn't really a way to mitigate it. You just have to consider the scale of the garage, the reasons that you've heard for it, and the scale of the house and the context, and whether you think that fits in enough or whether it doesn't. So there isn't really a way to mitigate.
If we felt that the garage was perhaps had the potential to be overbearing on the neighbour, could we ask for a landscape plan and ask for some planting to mitigate that element?
In respect to the garage and the impact on the neighbour amenity, that's completely reasonable, I believe. It is a big building, but there is definitely adequate space there. You know that the owner will be compliant because he's already shown us a plan and it's what they want to do. That would be enough to mitigate, I think, the scale of the building, of the garage on the neighbour, and in addition to the distance between the main house. So that would be acceptable. But I don't think anything is going to mitigate in terms of landscaping the enhanced sort of size of it. Okay.
I'm sorry. You've had your opportunity. We can't take any more contributions from the floor. I'm sorry. I know. I'm sorry. We can't do that. Councillor Lamy.
Thank you, Chair. There's quite a lot of good points in the building. It's been built to passive house standards that we want. It's got the white render which fits in with the rest of the neighbourhood. Unfortunately for me, the scale is too great, it's too high, it's got black roof, it's going to stand out, it's going to have a massive impact on the area. The garage will also add to that massive impact. If we lose any of the trees in the road, it's going to be standing out dramatically. So I cannot support this.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I echo similar comments in that my main concerns is around the overbearing nature of the garage. So if there were landscaping that could mitigate that to the southeast property, I would be able to support that. Also, if possible, again, trying to retain that conifer tree, because I feel as you're going up the close, that conifer tree does it would obscure any sort of out of character roofscapes that are a lot in keeping with Lanston Close. I minded to support the application, but I think that those two sort of sticking points may mitigate some of the impacts on the close itself.
Okay, so I think we're going to propose a couple of extra conditions, but let's yes, I think we can do that. We can propose a landscaping condition to ask for extra planting between the garage and the neighbour and a condition the tree.
What sort of model condition we would have would be sort of no trees and shrubs to be removed on the site, and that a landscaping plan showing what's retained and what's proposed is submitted to us. That would be completely adequate and acceptable. It would be pre-commencement, so we have to agree the trigger point when that has to happen. There is an element of commencement, so it will be sort of further to any. We'll come up with something suitable.
Okay, so that it is possible to condition the existing trees on the site and to ask for a landscaping plan to see if we can mitigate the impact of the garage on the neighbour.
That would be delegated back to us, Chair, and we would agree it with the applicant because we don't want to restrict any vegetation removal on the site. That's not reasonable. So we are just wanting to concentrate on the areas.
Okay. Are there any more contributions, please? And those conditions are agreed? Should we decide to approve this? Is that agreed?
Chairman, do we have to propose the new condition?
So I am proposing those new conditions. Are you, and Councillor Williams has seconded?
Yes, yeah.
Is that agreed? Sorry, Councillor Reid, did you want to make a comment?
No, Chair, just to do it properly.
I think we're all agreed. Okay, and Councillor Edwards, did you want to say anything?
Just briefly, I really welcome that condition. I think it goes some way to mitigating the bulk of the house. It's a large house. I mean, looking at the floor plans, it's something like, it's hard to judge exactly, but I guess about twice the size in terms of floor plan of the existing house. But I'm seeing shaking of heads. I may be wrong. I said it's my rough calculation from looking at the pictures, the plans. Nevertheless, although it's a large house, it's a fairly large and unusually shaped plot. And I think we would find plenty of houses in the neighbourhood of that size on similarly sized plots. And so I don't think we have planning reason on the side on the matter of bulk alone. I don't think there's much overbearing and overlooking because of the orientation of the windows, maybe into other people's front gardens as you go down the road, but not into bedrooms or back gardens for the most part. And so I would be content to support the recommendation.
Thank you, members. So we now move to the decision. This application is recommended for permission with the conditions that we have, just the extra condition on landscaping that we have agreed. So members, can I see all those in favour of this application, please? And those against? And those abstaining? So one of each. Yes. Thank you very much. So that application with the extra condition is approved. Thank you. We will now take a 15-minute break. Thank you. But we will do the city ground application before lunch. Are we ready to start again? Members, yes, I think we're all back, aren't we? Lovely, thank you very much, everybody. And I just want to apologise to all the people who are here for the City Ground Hillier Way application, which we are now taking. You've had a long wait, and thank you very much for hanging about. So we are now on item number 9 of today's Planning Committee agenda, which is the City Ground at Hillier Way in Winchester. And our presenting officer is Sean Quigley. Good morning, Sean. Actually, it's good afternoon, isn't it? Would you like to give us your presentation, please?
Thank you, Chair. This is an application for the Winchester Football Club. The proposal description is provision of an artificial grass pitch, a new floodlighting, new and relocated stands, storage container, vehicle access replacement, resurfacing of the existing parking area and ancillary works. The picture of the plan of the site on that slide. There's an aerial shot of the football club showing the relationship with the allotments to the left and the rugby ground to the right. Come back to that image. There's a view looking southeast from Hillier Way of the access to the football ground, continuing on down to the rugby ground in the distance there. An aerial shot of the football ground showing the relationship to the existing housing area to the south, and again the allotments to the north. There's the proposed block plan, and you'll see that the major change is apart from the change in the surface to an artificial pitch, is the formalisation of the parking area to the north, which currently is an informal parking area. This illustration also goes to show the kind of modest built development that is proposed on the sides of the pitches, which is moving to this next slide. Proposed new stand with dimensions there, so fairly modest. Proposed new stand 2, a different design of stand for the other side of the pitch. A dugout for team substitutes and managers again on the side of the pitch. Fence elevations, so 4 metre high fencing around the pitch, which is necessary for the for ball retention essentially, and then smaller barriers as well. This is essentially metal, plastic coated metal fencing. Just an indication of what the surfaces look like in pictorial form. This is a sort of technical drawing showing the light contours of the floodlighting, really serving to illustrate that the modern form of lighting which is proposed is much more directable than what exists at the moment. So the spill both to the sides of the pitch, in the side areas and above, is less. That final image shows an existing facility somewhere else, giving an indication of how it would look in the dark. But that's essentially the proposal, Chair. The main issues that we've gone through in the report are the things that will affect neighbours and the local area, and those things are essentially floodlighting, the management of the pitch, and noise management. And what we've sought to do is to have a set of conditions attached to the permission to control those elements such that its impact is brought within acceptable limits. But essentially, this is an application which is in accordance with development plan policies. And we've weighed the advantages of this development with the disadvantages There are disadvantages. It is an artificial pitch. However, in conclusion, our assessment concludes that overall the benefits of this development outweigh any disadvantages, and therefore we recommend it's approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Sean. And there are some extra conditions that are on the update sheet, covering the issues of the environmental impact of the artificial pitch, covering noise as well, just for the avoidance of doubt about those particular issues. Okay, lovely. Let's go now to the public speaking. And our first public speaker is the Cabinet Member for Inclusion and Engagement, Councillor Kathleen Becker. If you'd like to come forward, Kathleen, thank you very much. And do you have 5 minutes when you start?
Just to clarify, my official title is Cabinet Member for Community and Engagement. Inclusion and Engagement was my previous title. And it's the community aspect that I'm here to represent today.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm here today to speak strongly in favour of this application. As you all know, the council plan seeks to improve health and physical activity as a key element of health. We want to create a habit of physical activity amongst young people. We want to ensure that the district offers the right facilities to support good physical and mental health for all ages and ability. Sports facilities such as this enable our residents to live those healthy and fulfilled lives. The project will deliver on aims and commitments such as reduced health inequalities, offer a wide range of physical activities for all ages, and support communities to extend the range of sports and cultural facilities across the district. It will allow for increased participation amongst underrepresented groups through the strong involvement of other local clubs. It will allow for far more inclusive activities to take place. At the moment, Winchester City Football Club do not have a disability team, but they intend to have those teams that can use the facility as a home ground for matches and training, but disability football requires an artificial pitch. The development will also allow walking football to take place. Again, this requires an artificial pitch. The club will also partner with the Winchester City Flyers to double their female team participation and growth for youth players. I know my daughter is 5 and an avid football fan and desperately wants to play, but there is no space currently on teams for young girls to play football. Winchester City Flyers currently have 27 teams, and with the proposed development, there will be space for approximately 3 additional teams. However, this number of teams requires a lot of pitch time for practice and for games, and that pitch time isn't available if you are to rely on grass pitches. Grass pitches are great, and they will always form the basis of the council's outdoor pitch provision, but they do only allow for limited usage. For example, the estimate for the current pitch is that you only get 4 to 5 hours per week of adult use. The rest of the time it cannot be used, it has to be rested. Already there is great difficulty across the district in being able to find suitable space to train for football and to be able to play at weekends. When there's a period of wet weather, that pressure simply leads to weeks of cancelled training and games. And we know that the cancellation of training and games leads to a huge drop-off in participation in the sport, and especially in the under 15 to under 18 age groups. There is also a deficit of 3G pitches in the Winchester district, and existing facilities are almost fully booked all the time. This proposal goes some way to addressing that deficit. We do understand that there are environmental concerns with the proposed 3G pitch. However, these, as you've heard from the planning officer, these have been addressed through the preparation of the application before you today. 3G pitches provide a step change in capacity for use and significantly increase opportunity for participation. It can be used more often, irrespective of weather. They're a necessary part of the sports pitch provision, and a mix of facilities needs to be available across the district. It is simply not possible in the UK with the weather we have to rely on the availability of grass pitches. A move away from 3G pitches would be the death knell for football clubs and other sporting activities across the district. This proposal is a really important development for our city and for our district. It allows for more groups of people to participate in football, including those with disabilities, older people, and women and girls. The environmental issues have been taken into account and appropriate mitigations have been put in place to address potential issues. While important, these issues, we consider they do not outweigh the significant health, wellbeing and community benefits this application will bring to the city. So as Cabinet Member, I do urge you to support this proposal today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Becker. Do we have any questions of clarification for the Cabinet Member? No, thank you very much. You were obviously very clear and covered everything. Okay. Slight technical hitch here. Can we just sort the TV out, please? Lovely, thank you. So now we move to supporters. So we have Steve Lincoln from the City Council, and it is a City Council application, of course. John McLaren from the Winchester City Football Club, Tom Betts from S&C Slatter, and Janek Witkowski. Welcome all. Steve, are you going to speak?
I'm not really going to speak because Councillor Becker's made a very detailed and eloquent representation on behalf of the council, so I'll leave our colleagues from our design team and from the football club to speak. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, lovely. Well, you're there to answer questions at the end. Thank you. If you could like to switch your microphone on, and you will have 3 minutes from when you start speaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Planning Committee. My name is Tom Betts and I designed this proposal. With excellent support from the council's planning team, the credentials of this project have been analysed and enhanced where required to make certain that it would properly preserve residential amenity and is responsive to surrounding land. The upgraded facilities would require less energy than now, less electrical power for lighting and no water required for irrigation. Several valuable biodiversity enhancements are proposed, which are very credible in the football ground and would make it stand out in non-league circles. The development avoids flood risk and would avoid flooding to adjacent third-party land. Replacement surface water drainage would discharge at a controlled greenfield rate into the local channel, which mimics drainage arrangements of the current grass football pitch. Measures to mitigate against microplastic pollution and for future responsible refurbishment and recycling are in place to ensure the project is environmentally sustainable. Replacement sports area lighting is superior to current floodlights around the football ground, and the effects of activity noises would be improved. And active travel initiatives are ready to manage traffic to and from the city ground and to encourage visitors to make better travel choices. The considerate project design means the modernised sports facility would be operated without any unacceptable impacts. Thank you.
I thought I'd add a bit of background to the reason for this project. Winchester City has nearly 500 youth players participating in team sport. Our partner clubs, Winchester City Flyers, also have a similar number of 500 kids participating in team sport, and Winchester Rugby Club are also a partner in this project. Nearly 800 children participating in team sports. And you can't really underestimate the impact that team sport has on young people's mental health. And it's a great pleasure to see these young people join us at 5 years old, and then we meet them again at the ground in the bar for a pint, and they're fully rounded, well-developed young people with a confident outlook on life. And team sport gives young people that confidence and that ability to win, lose or draw as a team player in life. And that really can't be underestimated. And that's why we think that this project should be approved if that alone. Thank you.
As a supporter of 25 years for Winchester City, 2 years ago I lost my father due to illness and my mental health was on the deck. I went back to the club after a short time being away. It's helped my mental health. I'm back again with friends. I'm begging you on behalf of all Winchester City supporters, please approve this new pitch. We need it. More than you will ever know, we need it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, and we appreciate you being here. Thank you. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for the team? Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed on the update sheet that in fact the EU has banned not artificial pitches itself, but the plastic materials, the rubber crumb that's added to the top of the pitch. Can you tell me two things? Firstly, why do people add rubber crumb, and will you be adding rubber crumb? And B, what is the likelihood of rubber particles being emanated in the drainage into the water course next to it, i.e. the River Chin? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take that question. The reason for rubber crumb that's used to infill the pile, the turf, the blades of an artificial grass is to provide performance characteristics such that it performs like natural turf. So it's an intrinsic part of an artificial sports system to make it react and to make players and whichever ball, football or rugby ball, that's interacting with it play as close to natural turf as possible. And to answer the question about what controls are factored into this project to prevent microplastic pollution, say into the watercourses, there will be containment barriers around the perimeter fencing enclosing the artificial turf field of play. That's one mechanism to make sure that rubber crumb doesn't leap or jump or is brushed out into the general environment. And then the underlying drainage system, excuse me, which helps the pitch drain, it has controls and sieves and filters to capture any rubber crumb that may get into the drainage system before then surface water discharges into the local watercourses.
Thank you. It's entirely likely that this country will probably follow the lead of the EU in banning rubber crumb in 8 years' time. What alternative supplies will you be looking at using, or will you? Is there anything on the way, do you think?
It's here already. The reason for the 8-year transition that the European Commission has now enacted is so that the existing stock of rubber crumb filled 3G pitches around Europe can continue to be used until the end of their natural life cycle, at which point they would be resurfaced, recarpeted with a new type of 3G turf that is filled instead of rubber crumb with a more natural ingredient. That could be corn, that could be a ground olive pits, believe it or not, or it could be cork. So those products are available. They are here now.
Do you intend to use those instead of the rubber crumb?
No, because at the moment, UK government has not adopted or has not decided to follow the European Commission's lead. However, if UK government does that, then by the time that the initial playing surface would need to be replaced, the base and substrate of the sports pitch would be future-proof to accept one of the alternative types of 3G turf.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Lee.
Yeah, thank you for that. As a sportsman, until a few years ago, I appreciate the value of playing on these surfaces. Absolutely fantastic, and giving you the all-weather opportunities across many seasons. I just want to follow on from what Councillor Cunningham mentioned, and I'm aware of DEFRA studies. I'm aware of the EU legislation that's coming. And no doubt you are aware, we're all aware of microplastics and the nanoparticles and the pathways that are getting into the environment. And obviously that is very, very concerning. So my question is, why wouldn't you be brave enough and set an exemplar precedent here by switching to the new vegetal replacements instead of the crumb, the plastic crumb, because that, to us, I would have thought, as a community who care about the environment, we want to see that. So can you give me an indication as to why you wouldn't do that now, and what the implications would be if you went down that avenue, which I appreciate is being an early adopter?
I think, if I may just interject, I think this probably comes into the area of that's not the application that is before us, Councillor Lee. We have to decide the application on the basis of what is before us.
I can try and give you one answer, if I may. The reason for that is because one of the key stakeholders to the project is the Football Foundation. The Football Foundation will hopefully be providing a substantial capital grant to help this project be delivered. And the Football Foundation, and indeed the FA, the Football Association, their current policy is to support financially the development of 3G pitches that are filled with rubber crumb. Now, the reason why they're doing that is because at the moment, and they take on, but believe you me, they take on board all of the environmental sensibilities of artificial sports development, crikey, that they take it seriously. But because they are charged with spreading public funds as widely as they can do around this country to make sure that as many people benefit from the public purse, they, until legislation demands otherwise, they are following the most efficient way of making sure that as many people experience what it feels like to play in a modernised sports facility because of the public purse. That's the honest reason.
And I wonder if I could also just explore anecdotally, obviously I read up on the subject, is that when players leave the pitch, they are, put it lightly, contaminated with crumb. And that obviously then is moved to shower rooms and wash facilities and so on. Is there a method or a plan that you would put in place to mitigate that?
Yes, indeed. So the measures to mitigate, reduce the transfer of rubber crumb from the pitch to the surrounding environment has been known for several years, and it's a global understanding. So the reason for me bringing the globe into it is because it's all started with FIFA, the worldwide football authority. They conceived and set a number of design guidelines. So for that particular point, then detox units essentially would be installed to every pedestrian gate entering the field of play, which you could call them cattle grids, you call them what you want, but essentially players have to walk over them, which will then decant as much as possible wet or clinging rubber crumb from their boots into the detox unit before they then leave and go home.
It's good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Williams.
Excellent. So just it's a question really on the future of Winchester Football Club in regards to some of the residents' concerns. There were some saying, oh, well, you know, in the future there'll be promotion, etc. There'll be more traffic. But I know the FA have got sort of strict regulations on changing room sizes, etc. So I didn't know whether that would be able to alleviate some concerns. So well, the current designs, are they for a National League South level, or the current division that you guys are in? I think it's just 1 or 2 below National League South.
So the current design is we're at step 3, they call it. So we're just 1 below the National League system. If we were to go into the National League system, the pitch would actually be suitable and able to be used for that level of football, but it would require the carpet being replaced more regularly because there's a more stringent testing process in place and it has to meet a higher standard. So we are future-proofed in that sense. But the reality is we're more likely to get relegated than promoted because we live within our means as a group of directors. We don't splash the cash. We live within our means, and we have a budget that we are where we are.
Excellent, thank you. And I have seen the league table, so my condolences for the moment.
And Chair, if I could just add one thing there as well, I think it's worth bearing in mind that the ability of the club, irrespective of some of the other challenges that there are in getting promoted further, the ability of the club to get promoted isn't constrained by the grass pitch that's currently there now. So the change of surface from grass to the artificial turf pitch doesn't in itself drive the club's ability to get promoted and bring some of those other kind of challenges that residents and communities might face. That could perfectly well happen with the grass pitch that's there now. The proposal's more about providing opportunity for partner clubs, wider opportunity for mass participation by sort of younger and other underrepresented groups. Thanks.
And let's hope that the wider community use brings up lots of brilliant young players who can then play in the Winchester team and take us up to the next league. That would be great. All right, thank you. Any more questions, members? No? Thank you very much, gentlemen. You may return to your seats. So we now move to questions on the report. Members, do we have questions? Oh, Sean, did you have anything to update us on before we move to questions?
No, thanks, Chair.
Okay. Just wait. Just a minute, Councillor Lee.
Sean hasn't responded to anything, but there might be a position to clarify conditions later on. But I just wanted to say that I think it's really great when development comes forward like this, that it promotes healthy debates about the choices that we want to make and also the aspirations of the council, and it helps us have these conversations. But what I want to also do is, we've explored that through the public speaking, but just again to focus the mind through the debate of where we are with planning on this. And the choices in terms of the sorts of materials itself, it's not in your remit to make decisions on those things. It's in the government's remit to make decisions on those things. So we do have to be careful. So the proposal in the main is the consideration, but the merits of these particulars about the pitch itself and the materials used, it isn't in the gift of us to really have that decision making within the application, if you understand that. The ban is on the sale rather than on the use, and there's a transition period to enable sports and everything to accommodate and transition on it. And there's an opportunity through parallel regimes to be looking at that and the planning regime to lift up the environmental aspirations as much as we can. And on a site like this, it is engaging with lots of things that can do that through the planning regime, such as biodiversity net gain and managing some of the traffic better and looking after our trees, and also promoting community sort of welfare for all. And so if you then refer to the report, there's lots of good information there about the promotion of health and well-being. That's what we can do through the regime, the planning regime on a site like this. So that's where we are with that one. The conditions are embracing some of those concerns so we can mitigate rather than decision make about matters such as the concerns with microplastic pollution. And if you want to hear more about those conditions so we can manage it, understand it and control it in a way that is mitigating as far as we can through the planning regime, then we can do that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that clarification on it. Right. Questions on the report, anybody? Councillor Lee.
There was mention of containment and filters and so on, barriers, drains, etc., to capture what might be leaving the site and preventing wider pollution. I wonder if the officer could just expand on that and explain how thorough those would be, please.
Thorough in terms, sorry,
I mean, is it what percentage are we capturing? Obviously, the filters need to be emptied. Are they well positioned around the site? And how robust is that process?
Yes, I mean, the technical commentators have commented on the measures to prevent migration of the crumb from the playing surface to other areas by players, and that's been described. So let's say that those measures are, as I understand, very successful because they've been developed over many years. So rubber crumb doesn't move from the playing surface out, partly because of the barriers. And my understanding is also that the rubber crumb cannot migrate into watercourses from the pitch because it's essentially held by the fibres of the pitch. If crumb, which does migrate outside the barriers, ends up being taken by water into the drain system, then that small amount is collected by the filters that the technical experts have referred to. So in that way, in my assessment, I'm happy that is contained.
Okay, thank you. And my second question, if I may, we're obviously putting in low pollution lights and there's some bollards as well. Presumably they meet the same low pollution standards, and are these timed to be on only when the car park's been used?
Essentially, yes. The bollard lighting are very low key. In the parking area, there are 2 central 4-meter lights to illuminate the parking area. But again, they're very modern design, very directable, and will not spill out into the surrounding area.
So if there are no more questions on the report, we move to debate. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. I entirely get the social, health, mental health, environmental benefits, economic benefits of this development to the people of Winchester. I have never played football myself. I don't come, as a fan carrying a card. So I think I can be very objective in that statement, which is of course reflected in the more than 100 and whatever it is, letters of support that this application has received. I think we should remember that this is the improvement of an existing facility. So the questions of whether it should be there and access to it and so on are not really germane to this discussion. And nevertheless, there are some concerns, genuine concerns about issues of noise and disruption to the neighbouring community, which I treat seriously. I think we should treat those seriously. I'm pleased to see that we now have conditioned a management plan which will limit the use of the pitch to particular hours, and also install a system of monitoring and active management of behaviour and noise on the pitch, and I find that reassuring. As far as the question of 3G pitches and rubber crumb is concerned, until yesterday, I did have some serious concerns about the report, because it seemed to me that the construction and management plan, which is described on, was it page 115? Construction and Environmental Management Plan, the CEMP, applies to the construction period. And there wasn't, in my view, much in here, certainly not enough, about the ongoing active management of this artificial pitch. That, however, is now addressed by the condition, the pitch management plan, and I'm confident that we will be actively managing and looking for a way to transition to a more sustainable, less damaging surface during the lifetime of this new facility. So I feel very reassured by the discussion that we've had, the additions to the paper, and I'm very happy to support this.
Thank you very much. Councillor Laney.
Thank you, Chair. Bearing in mind that this is an upgrade of an existing area, I think it goes a long way to mitigate a lot of the problems that people foresee. I know from experience that there is a huge shortage of all-weather pitches in Winchester, and that needs to be addressed as best we can. I have severe reservations about the material that's being used, because I don't think that's the best thing for the environment. However, and it is a big however, but this project probably wouldn't succeed without the grants from the Football Association. So therefore, they really control the environmental issues that we've got. And I understand that modern environmentally friendly products are going to be a lot more expensive. So therefore, we've got to balance it all out. And I think that on balance, this is a very good application and I should be supporting it.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I fully support this application. I play regularly once a week on a 3G pitch. I know the rubber crumbs are contained on the pitch that I play. There is migration from some of those rubber crumbs inside your football shoes as you leave the pitch. So I welcome some of the mitigating measures that the football club are putting in place to try and capture those. I understand it's quite costly to replenish the rubber crumbs as well. So I think it's in their best interests to try and retain and replace as much of that rubber crumb as possible. In regards to the concerns about the floodlighting, floodlighting has improved so much over the years. It's very, very concentrated on the pitch itself, as we can see in the lighting plans that the officer has presented as well. I really do think this is an existing facility. This is not a new facility that we're proposing. There's already football going on there, so I fully much support the application.
Councillor Lee.
Yes, prior to today, I was very, very concerned about the microplastic nanoparticles pathways to the wider environment, given our nature emergency and our motion to protect our waterways. However, it's heartening to hear that the awareness of how to manage these risks is understood. The pitch management plan is understood and would obviously go a long way. Certainly there's going to be 100%, of course, and it's a shame we're not 8-10 years on where we've got the vegetal material rather than the crumb as the product. And as the officer says rightly, we can't condition that, although I'd love to, but we are where we are. So yes, I get it. I'm a sportsman. These pitches are phenomenally brilliant in providing the facilities that we need, mental health, teamwork, all the rest of it. So on the balance of the two arguments, I'm in favour. Thank you.
Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think I'm definitely going to be supporting this proposal. It'll definitely be used to make sure that the pitch is used in a much more efficient way and increase the playing time and participation rates for a larger, more diverse community. I very much welcome the action you're taking in terms of the microplastic filtration system, which I think is very good, and I will be supporting your application. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we move to the decision, and the recommendation is that this application is to be permitted. So can I see all those in favour of permitting this application? And that's all members. Lovely, thank you very much. So we will return at 2 p.m. for the afternoon session.